My name is Olivia Chen, and for the past 15 years, I've been the family disappointment. Not because I failed at anything, but because I chose a different path from what my parents had mapped out for me. Another family dinner, another chance to remind me what a failure I am, I muttered to myself, adjusting my simple black dress as I walked up to my parents' mansion. The same house I secretly helped pay for, though they'd never know it. The door swung open before I could knock. My mother stood there, perfectly coiffed in designer wear, her eyes already carrying that familiar look of disappointment. "Olivia, you're late. Everyone's already here," she said, her voice sharp. "And couldn't you have worn something more appropriate?" I glanced down at my dress. It cost more than her entire outfit, but its simple elegance didn't scream money the way she preferred. "Hello to you too, Mom." Inside, the dining room buzzed with the usual suspects. My brother Michael, the golden child, sat at the head of the table where Dad used to sit, showing off his new Rolex. His wife Jessica hung on his every word, both metaphorically and literally. My younger sister Diana was there too, fresh from her latest luxury vacation, paid for by our parents, of course. "Look who finally decided to show up," Michael smirked. "Still driving that old Toyota Liv? If only he knew that old Toyota was just for show. My collection of cars, safely stored in my private garage across town, would make his leased BMW look like a toy." "Some of us have to work for a living," I replied, taking my seat at the far end of the table, my designated spot as far from the successful siblings as possible. "Oh honey," Mom chimed in, placing a hand on Michael's shoulder, "managing a small consulting business is hardly what we'd call real work. Not like your brother's position at Morgan Stanley." I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. Michael's position was actually a mid-level management role, nothing like the executive title he claimed at family gatherings. I knew because my firm had recently reviewed Morgan Stanley's organizational structure for a potential acquisition. "Speaking of work," Diana leaned forward, her new diamond bracelet catching the light. "When are you going to get a real job, Olivia? I'm sure Michael could put in a word for you at the bank." "I'm doing fine, Diana." "Fine," Mom scoffed, serving the appetizers. "You're 35, unmarried, no children, running some tiny consulting operation from a rented office downtown. That's not fine, that's..." She paused for effect. Shameful. Dad, who had been quietly sipping his wine, finally spoke up. "Your mother's right, Olivia. We didn't pay for your Harvard education so you could waste your potential like this." I bit back a laugh. They hadn't paid for anything. I'd worked my way through college, built my company from scratch, and now Phoenix Consulting Group was one of the most powerful firms in the business world. Not that they knew that. To them, I was just stubborn Olivia with her cute little consulting business. "Still a nobody," Mom sneered, shaking her head as she sat down. "While your siblings are making us proud, you're just existing." Just then my phone rang. I usually silenced it during these dinners, but I'd been waiting for this call. The screen showed Sarah Martinez, my head of operations. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, standing up. "Really, Olivia? During dinner?" Mom's voice dripped with disapproval. I stepped away from the table, answering the call. Sarah's clear, professional voice came through. "Mrs. Seo, the $50 million deal with Anderson Tech is ready for your signature. We need your approval within the hour to close the Asian markets." I could see my family's ears perk up at the mention of $50 million. Dad actually choked on his wine. "Put it through to my secure email," I replied calmly. "I'll sign it right now." Opening my laptop, the one they probably thought I used for my small business bookkeeping, I pulled up the contract. With a few clicks, my digital signature appeared on the document that would acquire one of the largest tech firms in Southeast Asia. The room had gone completely silent. I could feel their eyes on me, minds racing to process what they'd just heard. Mom's fork clattered against her plate, and Michael's smug smile had frozen into something closer to confusion. "Olivia," Dad started, his voice uncertain, "what exactly was that about?" I closed my laptop with a soft click. "Just business, Dad. Nothing for you to worry about." I smiled, picking up my fork. "Now, shall we continue with dinner?" The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in 15 years, no one at the table had anything to say about my career choices. But this was just the beginning. They had no idea what was coming next. The rest of dinner passed in an uncomfortable haze of clinking silverware and awkward glances. My mother, never one to stay quiet for long, finally broke the silence. 50 million, she said, trying to sound casual while failing to hide her curiosity. That must be some mistake. Your little consulting firm couldn't possibly. Actually, Michael interrupted, his banker instincts kicking in. I've been hearing rumors about a mysterious consulting group buying up tech companies across Asia. Phoenix something. He trailed off, looking at me with newfound interest. I took another sip of wine, enjoying the moment. Phoenix Consulting Group. Diana nearly dropped her phone. Wait, that's not your company. Phoenix is this huge firm that's been all over the financial news. They just acquired that major software company in Singapore for like $2 billion. 2.4 billion, I corrected quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dad's hand trembled as he set down his wine glass. You're lying, Mom said sharply. You're just trying to get attention. Phoenix Consulting Group is run by some brilliant CEO named. She fumbled for the name. Olivia Phoenix. I finished for her. I changed my last name legally 10 years ago, right after you told me I was tarnishing the family name by leaving Morgan Stanley to start my own business. Michael's face had turned an interesting shade of pale. But that's impossible. Phoenix Consulting Group is worth 37 billion as of this morning's market close, I supplied. Though with the Anderson Tech acquisition, we should hit 40 billion by next week. The silence that followed was absolute. I could almost hear their mental calculations, their worldview rearranging itself as they processed that the daughter they'd dismissed for 15 years was actually one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Phoenix Consulting Group acquires Anderson Tech in surprise move, stock soars 28%. I turned the phone around so they could see the headline. Mom's hands flew to her mouth. Dad looked like he might faint. Why didn't you tell us? Diana whispered. Would it have mattered? I asked, meeting each of their eyes in turn. All those years you never asked about my work. Never showed any interest in what I was building. You were too busy praising Michael's middle management job and Diana's trust fund lifestyle. But the office downtown, Mom sputtered. That tiny space. I laughed softly. That's where I meet local clients. Phoenix Consulting Group's headquarters occupies the top 10 floors of the glass tower downtown. You know, the building Dad always points to as a symbol of real success. Michael pushed his chair back suddenly. This is ridiculous. I would have known if my sister was running Phoenix. I work in finance. Really? I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through my emails. According to the org chart I received last week, you're a level 3 manager in Morgan Stanley's domestic retail division. Hardly the executive director position you've been claiming at family dinners. His face turned red. You've been spying on me? No, Michael. Phoenix is preparing to acquire Morgan Stanley's Asian operations. Your department came up in the due diligence report. Page 247, I believe. Jessica, Michael's wife, was looking at him with growing horror. Apparently she'd believed his inflated title too. The Anderson Tech deal, Dad said slowly, his banker's mind finally catching up. That means you're the one who outbid your firm last month. Yes. I smiled apologetically. Wasn't personal, Dad. Anderson Tech just fits better with our portfolio. Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This changes everything. Olivia, darling, we should plan a proper celebration. I'll call the country club. No. My voice was quiet but firm. Nothing changes. I'm still the same person I was an hour ago. The only difference is now you know that your family shame has been quietly building an empire while you were busy being embarrassed by her. I stood up, smoothing my cheap dress. A custom piece that cost more than Mom's car. Thank you for dinner. I have an early morning tomorrow. We're closing another acquisition. Wait, Diana called out, desperation in her voice. My startup idea. Maybe we could discuss. Submit it through proper channels, I said, picking up my bag. Phoenix has a very thorough vetting process for potential investments. Though I should warn you, we typically look for founders with actual business experience. As I walked to the door, Dad hurried after me. Olivia, sweetheart, let's not be hasty. Family should stick together. Maybe we could discuss some investment opportunities. I turned to face them one last time. The whole family had followed me to the foyer, their faces a mix of shock, regret, and poorly concealed avarice. You know what the funny thing is? I said, my hand on the doorknob. All those years when you thought I was struggling, I was actually helping you. The mysterious buyer who saved this house from foreclosure 3 years ago? That was me. The anonymous donation that kept Michael's position at Morgan Stanley during layoffs? Also me. The lucky stock tip that paid for Diana's condo? You guessed it. Their faces crumpled as the truth sank in. I did all that because despite everything, your family. But I never needed your approval. I certainly don't need it now. Mom stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Olivia, please. I have another dinner tomorrow night, I continued calmly. With Warren Buffett. He's interested in discussing a partnership. I'm sure that meets your standards for a real job, but honestly, I don't care anymore. I opened the door, pausing one last time. Oh, and Michael, the Morgan Stanley acquisition goes through next week. You might want to update your resume. Phoenix has very high standards for middle management. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. As I walked to my old Toyota, actually a custom-armored luxury vehicle disguised as a modest sedan, I heard the chaos erupting inside. Mom's wails, Dad's urgent voice presumably already calling his broker, Diana's shrill demands that someone explain what just happened. But none of it mattered anymore. I'd spent 15 years being the family shame, quietly building something extraordinary while they looked down their noses at me. Now they knew the truth, but the most satisfying part? I no longer cared what they thought. My phone buzzed again, Sarah with updates about tomorrow's meetings. I smiled as I started the car. The family shame had a billion-dollar empire to run. The next morning my face was everywhere. Phoenix O strikes again. Anderson Tech acquisition rocks market, screamed the headlines. My phone had hundreds of missed calls and messages from family members who'd suddenly remembered my existence. Cousins with business proposals, uncles with investment opportunities, distant relatives claiming they'd always believed in me. I ignored them all. Sarah met me at the office with my usual morning coffee. Your mother's in the lobby, she said. Again. With your sister this time. They've been here since 7 a.m. Standard protocol, I replied, walking into my corner office overlooking the city. No special treatment for family. They'll need to submit a formal appointment request like everyone else? Exactly. I sat down at my desk, already focusing on the day's acquisitions and mergers. Oh, and Sarah? Send a message to HR at Morgan Stanley. My brother's position should be evaluated based purely on merit during the transition. Sarah smiled knowingly. Of course, Mrs. Phoenix. Purely on merit. The family shame had finally shown them what real success looked like. But the best revenge wasn't the money or the power. It was the fact that I'd built it all while they weren't even paying attention. Some people need to be seen to feel validated. I just needed to prove to myself that I could do it. The fact that I could now show my family exactly who they'd underestimated for all these years? That was just a satisfying bonus. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Mom. Darling, please. We're your family. We deserve a chance to be part of your success. I typed a quick response. You had 15 years of chances. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an empire to run. Then I turned off my phone, opened my laptop and got back to work. After all, empires don't build themselves. Something my family was only now beginning to understand.